Nostalgia X podcast starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We're here.
Nostalgia X.
You're listening to the Nostalgia X podcast with your host, DJ Doom and J-Bat.
It's your boy DJ Doom
and your boy J-Bat,
bringing you episode 2 of the Nostalgia X podcast. For any new listeners, we definitely appreciate you tuning in. This is, of course, episode 2. So guess what? This wasn't one of those little projects where we get started and then it just never takes off. We're going to keep this going every week for y'all. We got a lot of stuff going on in terms of Team Nostalgia. We got a website that we've started, teamnostalgiax.com. And we got a lot of things coming with that. We've already loaded some fun questions. J-Bat and myself asked ourselves. We're going to have player bios. When new team members get added, we're going to have, player bios and a lot of fun things there. And it is, at the end of the day, there's a game we play called Hero Clicks, and that is what the team is mainly centered around. The podcast, of course, it's all about just keeping it fun, and that is, of course, that's something separate. This is our baby, our main project. The Team Nostalgia is something on the side we're doing that we expect to have a lot of fun with. But back to business, one thing I want to make sure I mention for any new listeners and listeners coming in, from the first episode, a couple things we have set up for y'all to communicate better with us. We are about to start promoting via Facebook. So that way you can get real interactive with like polls and ideas for upcoming episodes, topics, and things like that. So you should see that about the same time you see this episode getting promoted. But just to take care of some laundry, we have our Twitter. You can follow us at NSX Podcast. Instagram is nostalgiax_podcast. And something real big for us, we have a Patreon. It is set up, it is in place. If you want to show us any love, we have donations starting at $1. So $1 a month, it'll go a long way. All the support, we'd appreciate it. We're just getting started on this podcast thing, and we definitely love, bringing it to you every week, and it can only grow from here. It's 100% funded by J-Bat and myself. So like I said, if you like listening to us, if you like what we're bringing, the ideas and everything that we have coming, definitely show us some support. And to do that, it is patreon.com/NSX podcast. And Patreon, if you aren't familiar with it, it's Patreon. So patreon.com/NSX podcast. Go there. The page is set up. I hope you like the design. We kind of went with the nostalgic 80s kind of vibe. And shout out to the artist that did the little artwork there. We're trying to reach out to him and get some custom work done, hopefully here in the future. We also have an artist. You want to talk about the artist that we're going to be working with?
Yeah, definitely. He's a really, really good friend of mine now. Met him through volunteering at a convention. Here locally, it was the Huntsville Comic-Con, which was really, really cool because DJ Doom and I are real big fans of comic books, artists, and also actors. We want to meet some of the actors and everything else, and I wanted to volunteer it. So I talked to him, and I got to know this one gentleman. His name is Nathan Massengill. Very, very humble person. Love his artwork. I knew that he did one of my favorite lines. It was the Justice Society of America artwork with Alex Ross, which Alex Ross is by far one of my favorite artists, as long as with Nathan, because he worked with him. And I got to know him. And funny thing is, he lives locally here.
Yeah.
So that's the coolest thing.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. A really cool comic book artist. Lives here in our...
What's some of the other projects he's done? I think they'd like.
He's done Deadpool, the earlier Deadpools. He's done Batman: Brave and the Bold. Really, really cool.
Super awesome stuff.
I mean, his portfolio goes on and on.
Yeah, he dabbles in a little bit of everything, but the big ones he's known for, are what you've mentioned, and Deadpool being a big one. Obviously, a lot of people that weren't familiar with that character, with the movies, the success with Deadpool 2 and everything, which if you haven't seen it, check it out. It is an awesome, I rate it 10 out of 10. Won't say anything else about it because we keep it spoiler free on here. But
didn't you said you were going to do a double feature one day?
Yeah.
How'd it go, man? How did it go?
So I said last episode I was going to pull a double feature, which the last time I did that, I want to say I was probably like fresh out of high school. I haven't done that in over a decade. So
he's still young, by the way.
So we had a long weekend this past weekend, a holiday weekend, which I am so appreciative of. That's part of what allowed us to start the podcast because we had a little extra free time. So all that extra legwork it takes. But with that extra time, I actually have a movie theater. It's arguably the best one in the area.
I agree.
And I went there. And it's only like a minute from here. So
yeah,
super close.
Literally a minute.
Yeah. Like I could ride my bike there Stranger Things style if I wanted to. And yeah. But I could totally it's that close. So I was like, you know what? Sunday, my girlfriend probably wants to spend some time with me, but if I go early enough, maybe I can knock both of these movies out. So I went to see Deadpool 2 and Solo. Both were great movies. Deadpool 2, hands down, probably my favorite Marvel movie of all time. It's that damn good, let me tell you. So obviously not a family friendly movie. So I have a 6-year-old that I'd love, I wish, but no, sorry. Like, hey, you can see Deadpool in like the toys and collectibles that I buy, and I can tell you maybe what happened in the movie.
And the
clean
books.
version.
And the coloring books. Think about the coloring books too, because kids like the color too.
But as far as you see in the movie, maybe when you're older. But but the movie was fantastic. Solo was great as well. It kind of pains me to see that it's struggling in the box office a little bit, and I think the main reason for that, part of it is the timing of the movie. It came at a time where there's a lot of stuff going on, and not just in the movie theater, but like in society. There's a lot of things going on. So not everybody's maybe in the movie watching mood. Or I think part of the problem is, I was talking to one of my coworkers about this. There's sort of like a balance between good movies coming out and how often people actually like going to the movies.
Yeah. Like,
I'm not someone that I'm a movie goer, but I don't go typically more than twice in a month. If I go more than twice in a month, that's different. That's out of the ordinary for me.
That is.
So, I had an uncle growing up. We're actually going to go see him later. But, my Uncle Papoon, he goes every month. Like every few weeks he hits up the movies. And that's been his thing since I was a kid. And that would always excite me because he'd be the uncle that'd be like, hey, we're taking the kids. We're going to go see this movie. So I'd get to see a lot of movies growing up when I lived in Huntsville because of my uncle. And he's still like that. Like if there's a new movie that's either out or about to be out, I can ask him about it. He's on top of the previews. He's on top of the actors, what they got going on. That's always been his thing. With all that being said, but as far as that goes, just movies in general, I kind of grew up around, the family constantly, frequently going. So I decided to do the double feature. I watched both of the movies. I loved both of them, but I just, like I said, I grew up Star Wars. I love everything about it. I'm a huge fan. I think the biggest thing that hurt it, other than what I've mentioned, is maybe the way they marketed it. I've seen a lot of things online, like people are trying to get creative over why it may be struggle or struggling. The most creative or stretch, I wouldn't say it's creative, was someone saying that the main character being white, Caucasian, is why it may be struggling. And I'm like, y'all are really digging hard. Y'all are really trying to find anything. And I don't think it's that.
No,
I think that
it's never that.
I think it's the timing. It's only been a few months since we got our last episode. That just came out on Blu-ray like a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. The Last
Jedi?
Yeah.
I think that came out 2 months ago.
Yeah, so 2 months ago on Blu-ray, and then we already got another one in theaters. So, you know what I'm saying? I just think that it goes back to how often people like going to the movies, especially since Deadpool 2, Infinity Wars, Black Panther. We're getting hit back-to-back with amazing stuff in the theaters. That's just the comic book stuff we're talking about.
Here's the thing. Here's the funny thing. Disney doesn't have to worry about anything.
They're making money.
They're
all the
making
way.
it from
Right.
all those movies.
Right. So I think the biggest thing, like some people said, oh, you move it to December like the other movies. That doesn't guarantee. I also, talking amongst friends, I think also just not everyone wanted to see a movie about Solo.
Right. Well, I kind of wanted to see it because there's some parts
we want to see it. We're fans, but like non-fans.
Oh yeah.
This was a movie more for fans, and the episodes they're just marketed as epic movies, like Star Wars, the episodic ones. So this wasn't seen as that by any means because it wasn't, and that's what hurt it ultimately.
Right.
I think the biggest thing this does, I read a great article this morning where a gentleman said, I think that the box office issues with Solo ultimately help Star Wars as a whole, because think any big movie franchise, like even Marvel, for example, the Hulk with Edward Norton was one of their first ones, and they struggled. It did not do well, even though it was a pretty good movie.
Well,
it didn't do well.
Here's the thing. Here's a little backstory with that Hulk with Edward Norton. Edward Norton actually put in some of his money.
Yeah,
for that
to
movie.
make it happen.
Yeah, so he had a lot of say into it because of his money. But I mean, the storyline, I liked it, but I mean, they could have done a little bit better.
Right. It wasn't the best story. It started off with a lot of potential. Like I love watching the first few minutes of that movie where they're in like Brazil or something, and
when you try to
relax
his attitude and everything,
and you're waiting for the Hulk to first show. Because I mean, if you watch the Hulk and it doesn't start off with the Hulk tearing stuff up, you're waiting. You're at the edge of your seat, like, oh my God, when is he coming? Yeah. Every time someone kind of does something to tick Bruce Banner off, you're like, oh snap, here it comes. So I'm waiting for that, and just that anticipation, that whole everything leading up to it is great. So like the way they started that movie, fantastic. But then like everything that happens after that, yeah,
they could have done a little bit better,
right? So that is considered a box office flop by all, ways, shapes, or forms for Marvel, and that was essentially their first film before Iron Man. And some people try to say it was just for Iron Man because they try to forget about that one.
No one wants to remember the one before Edward Norton. No one wants to remember that movie.
Yeah, that one's like Universal though. So
that was like, ouch.
That was pre-Marvel, technically Universal. So that one, we don't even want to talk about that. No. But on that same subject, the writer of this article also points out that Disney has had other box office flops. Like Cars 3 did not do great. I don't know how Planes did, but Planes probably didn't do great.
Funny thing, I've never seen Cars 3 yet.
So yeah, because let's be honest, you're like, what,
I have it in my movie collection, just mainly for my kids and all that stuff. But other than that, I'm like, I kind of don't want to watch it right now. I'm not in that type of mood.
Right. And I think that's how the world was. See, we're getting Incredibles 2 after how many ever years?
I think it's like 2-3 years or more.
No, it's been more. It's been over than 10 years, bro.
Oh, jeez.
It's been
really?
A long
It's been
time.
More than 10?
Yeah, it's been a long time, man. It might actually be more like 8, but it's been a long time, way more than 2 or 3 years. So we've been waiting a while for Incredibles sequel to come out, but that's finally happening. But with that said, I think that's a better way to do it. Like, take some time versus just pumping them out like they do with Cars, and then you end up with weak writing and a weak story, and So that's just one example. There have been other movies that didn't go so well for big franchises, but this is sort of Star Wars' first like major movie, flopping them. It's not, the movie's not bad at all, but it's just not doing it, and that's what we're looking at, numbers, because at the end of the day, they got to make money off the movies. Well, otherwise they're not going to keep
coming up. Well, thinking about a good reason to talk about is I remember when I went to go see it with my father and my brother. I watched the whole movie. I paid attention to everything, and after the movie, we were talking about it, and it's like the director, Ron Howard. Mm-hmm. He likes to tell stories,
right? And
this was a perfect storytelling movie because, of course, him being a director, he was a really, really fanatic of George Lucas and all the Star Wars franchises, and he wanted to make sure to put in some of the detail from the movies onto this one.
Right.
which I caught majority of all the ones that came out with it, and I was like, I remember them talking about this in this episode. I remember talking about that, and I loved it. But most people want to see this movie to be more impactful with other things that normally other Star Wars movies does not have. So, I mean, just looking at it, I mean, a lot of people, like some of the comments I read, they just didn't like how the story was drawn about.
I think, yes, to some extent. Obviously, we want to keep it spoiler free, so we won't mention any names and stuff. But I think that with the story in general, when you come into Star Wars, part of what keeps the fans or has kept the fans through the years coming back is learning more about the different planets, learning more about different characters, seeing new alien species,
Right.
all kinds of that, all that stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
It helps us, or it makes us feel like we're being taken to a place.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of, going all in like the main episodes do, you don't get that as much. I'm not saying there's none of it, but they could have done a little better there. And I don't want to ruin it for anyone that hasn't seen it. By all means, definitely go check it out if you haven't. If you've seen it, I've heard some people have seen it twice, and the second go around was better. So
for my rating, I give it a 9 out of 10.
I give it honestly, and we're both big fans. I give it more of a 7, just in my case. But I did love it. I wouldn't mind going to see it again, and I don't typically watch movies twice in theaters.
Funny thing, my brother saw it twice in one day.
What?
That was the day we went.
Jeez.
So he took his wife's niece and nephew to go see it.
So when he watched it with you, that was the second go around?
That was the second go around.
Okay.
So I mean, and he loved it.
Yeah.
His favorite character was Lando. I'll just put it like that.
My favorite character was Woody Harrelson's character.
Woody Harrelson's character was very, very good. It was unexpected, but you're like, okay, so this is what happens. This is what I was. So you'll see little glimpses like, hey, that looks really familiar. So I mean, I liked how the premise of it is. That's the reason why I gave it a 9. But other than that, I mean, other than being a fan, big fan of it, I loved it.
Awesome. Well, from there, let's talk about more of what we did. So obviously, I did the double feature. We had a long weekend. We started the podcast. We've just been working on, kind of the legwork of getting this thing on air and everything. We've got it on Google Play Music. We got on the iTunes or Apple's podcast app. We're also on Stitcher, which is an app for podcasters. So I'm really happy to say we're on there. And we're working on getting on all the other major platforms too. But this is something we're putting a lot of time and energy on. So we appreciate you listening. And, the plan is to drop a new episode every Monday. So Monday morning, if that's your first day of the work week, you can listen to us on the way to work or whenever you want to listen to us. But we're here for you guys every week with some new content.
Yep.
From there, I think let's talk about what we mentioned last week, Joel. You got some haunted places. I'm not exactly a haunted, like legit haunted location connoisseur. Like I don't just go out to these places. Joel, I think, has been to at least a few of these that he's going to talk about.
Oh yeah.
We're going to go into describing them. And we're going to get some live reactions from myself about them because Joel's gathered a lot of details about these. So I'm excited to hear what he's come up with.
Well, first of all, as DJ Doom just said that I'm a big fanatic of that. I've watched a lot of the TV shows.
Like the haunted house or haunted locations and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I've seen a few shows.
Like some of the shows that were on, some of the network TVs that you'd see, and your reactions when you first see it on television and everything else. And then I was researching a lot of that stuff, and I was like, I wonder if around in the city that we live in, has that type of stuff. And so I remember watching all those TV shows. I wanted to see if we had anything in our city, and we do. DJ Doom will probably remember this place. We will possibly kind of drive past it all the time when we're downtown. It's the train depot.
Okay.
Huntsville Train Depot. Okay. The history of that was during, I believe it was like the Civil War, and not the Marvel Civil War, the regular Civil War.
Right.
But no Iron Man, no Captain America. But going back to it, this depot used to be where they had prisoners in the third floor.
Okay.
Now,
where this is going.
when you go there, you'll look at the third floor, and they have plexiglass all over the walls, but it's covering up. It's actually protecting the brick or cement that are on the walls, and you'll see drawings, you'll see writings on it, and those were actually the prisoners that were in those jails. And the history of it was that some of the prisoners that were there actually died there, and also some of the soldiers that were watching the prison with the general there. And there's a half bust of the general that was in charge of that area. And I remember going with my father and my brother, doing a paranormal investigation, as they would say. We went with a...
Did you have Ghostbuster equipment? Like, were you ready?
I was ready, dude. I was like, okay, I got my video camera. I got my recording device. I was like, okay, I'm all set. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I want to do this. And
blacklight equipment. Oh my God, what's this gooey substance?
I wish we had blacklight equipment, because it would have been pretty cool. But we had the whole entire train depot to ourselves.
Wow.
And this was at 1:00 in the morning.
Is this just like open to the public or something?
No. This investigation group actually had permission to do this.
Okay.
So
like an actual paranormal investigation crew, you, I guess, got to accompany them there?
Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. And they split us up in groups. Of course, I stayed with my dad and my brother. And we went into the prison area, the third floor. Okay.
Let's go to the worst area.
So my father, he grabs my digital recording device, puts it on record, and lays it right in front of the journal half bust. Okay. And the first question that comes out of my dad's mouth, he goes, "Where are your soldiers now?" Okay.
Ballsy.
There was nobody in the room except myself, my brother, of course my dad, because he asked the questions, the lead investigator that's in charge of that paranormal group, and their videographer. So there's only 5 or 6 of us in there. Nobody else. Let alone we didn't know. I wanted to replay the video, the recording.
Mm-hmm.
I rewound it back to where my father was saying, "Where's your soldiers now?" And clear as day, you hear the word "gone." There was nobody talking.
But did you hear it when like it live, or did you hear it in the recording?
We heard it in the recording. Okay. So that's called an EVP, an electric voice phenomenon. A little technical term for that. Because sometimes you can only hear it, they can gather enough energy to say something in that electronic device. Okay. And it was very, very cold in that area. They turned off all the ACs. AC unit was off. We knew it was off. We're like, okay, this is going to be crazy. We checked the temperature. It was like close to 50 degrees in that room. There was no breeze coming out of the windows. There was nothing. And then all of a sudden, we're walking around, and one of the investigators, the lead investigator, is like, "Hey, why don't you guys come with me to the children's toy room?" I'm like,
Children's toy room?
Yeah. It was pretty crazy. Once when they told us that, we're like, what? What are you talking about? So we walk over there, and as this day, it's the employees' break rooms. And we all were in a circle. They had children's toys that used to be kind of like, that look like back then what they used to have. They put in the middle of the circle. I am standing in that circle, and the lead investigator puts their recording device in the middle, and she starts asking questions. All of a sudden, I feel this on my arm.
Like a cold touch?
Very cold touch, and it wouldn't let go.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I stopped them. I was like, "Hey guys, I feel something on my left side." They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I feel something on my left side touching my arm." Sure enough, there was an imprint of a hand on my arm, my left arm. I wish I took a picture of it, but I didn't have my camera on me because I was really, really tired. And the investigator's like, "Okay, let's check the temperature. Don't move." I was like, "What do you think I'm going to do? Run? There's nothing to do." So I stood there, and they took the temperature. The temperature was a lot colder on my left side than my right side. So I had something on my left side. We didn't hear anything on the recorder at all. So I was like, this is freaking me out.
Super freaky. Yeah. I don't know about y'all, but I personally don't like I love watching it, but like actually going in, heck no. I will keep my distance. I love watching it, listening about it and stuff like that, reading about it. I don't mess with that stuff.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I want to ask, do you believe in ghosts, and if so, why? Obviously, you had some experiences, but what are your thoughts on that whole afterlife? Like,
I do believe in ghosts, and I'll tell one story of what actually really did happen to me. When I was in, I'm going to say probably middle school or my freshman, sophomore year of high school, my grandfather passed away on my dad's side. And so we decided to bring my grandmother here from where they used to live at, was in California, all the way over here. And every time when I was in my house, I'd always feel like comfort or something with me. And I didn't know that. But every time I took care of my grandmother, I'd always see my grandmother look into her left side, starting speaking Tagalog, which is the Filipino language. And I always ask her, I was like, "Grandma, who are you talking to?" And she would speak to me in Tagalog, and I don't know a lick of that language at all. So I'm like, "Oh, okay," playing off like I do know it. Then I asked my dad. My dad's like, "Oh, that's your grandfather's name." I was like, "What?" So, long story short, I was sitting down in the living room. I was all by myself. My grandmother was in the hospital because she had an accident and everything else, and I started bawling up for no apparent reason because I'm like, I don't want to lose my grandmother. I don't want to, and I felt something on my shoulder. And I don't forget it because I knew it was my grandfather, because every time when a subject of my grandmother came about, I would always feel something on my shoulder. And also, a funny thing is, my grandfather was a big wrestling fan. And every time I watched wrestling, I knew he was next to me watching, because he was very animated when he watched wrestling. Not like when we sit down, we're like, "Oh man, that's cool. Oh man." My grandfather would move all the time. It was crazy because my dad was like, hey, you might want to sit over here when we watch wrestling with your grandfather. I was like, why? He goes, okay, go ahead, sit next to him.
He gets up, start reenacting the moves.
Yeah, he gets close to it. But that was kind of some of my experience with that. And, you know, seeing majority of some videos and everything else of experiences of other people had, and I'm like, wow, that kind of relates to me. So you see you'll see TV shows, they'll try to vamp things up, but most times they're actually real. Funny thing is, one of the paranormal activity groups, I don't know if you ever heard of them. You ever heard of the TV show Deep South Paranormal? Used to be on Sci-Fi Channel.
I didn't catch that one.
Real Southern guys. Well, those are actually two different groups. One's from Louisiana, and the other one's actually here in Huntsville.
Okay.
And I met one of them. Very nice guy. I loved the guy to death. When I first met him, I told him I was a huge fan. And he goes, yeah, majority of the stuff that we did actually did happen. And I still have all the recordings. I was like, are you serious? So, I mean, going to relating to, you know, doing paranormal investigations, I mean, I believe it.
Well, let's move on to the next place. You had the train depot. What else you got?
I have the next one, Sloss Furnace.
Okay. Yeah,
You ever heard of Sloss Furnace?
Absolutely. I've driven past that multiple times.
I'm pretty sure you heard of Sloss Fright Furnace, the sideshow haunted house that they divvy up.
Yeah.
It's an actual haunted place.
Well, tell me and the listeners something about it.
This place is, I'd say, 3 hours away from here?
Yeah.
Roughly 3 hours away to where we live. It's a real haunted furnace place. And
which, I mean, who the hell goes to a furnace? So you already know it's like uncharted territory for most people.
Very uncharted territory.
So that already makes you uncomfortable. It's like,
And I remember hearing stories of, you know, paranormal investigation groups actually going out and actually getting experiences. I actually met one of them that happened to them. And they actually let me listen to the recording, which was, if you listen to the recording, your goosebumps will go even higher when you hear it. And I'll actually tell you the story of it because I still remember it till this day. So they always split up in groups, which is, I don't know why. Why would you want to split up in a group? So talking about the story of, you know, one of the stories I've heard from this paranormal.
Sloss Furnace. Is it Sloss?
Sloss. Sloss. And the one thing I don't get is, why do they go in different groups?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is they want you to be freaked out. So the smaller the group, the better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got a crew of 3 versus a crew of 7. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's much more creepy.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Especially if you don't know the other 2 people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't trust these people with my life.
Yeah. So when going back to it, it's like she told me the story of when they went downstairs to the furnace. Most times you can't go to it, but they had access to it. And their sound technician guy always had a lapel mic on his hat. And all of a sudden you see him fall over and grab a rail.
What the?
Yeah, this is crazy. So they replay back the audio, and they started talking to each other, and one of them was like, "Hey, so and so, can you see if this is working?" And all of a sudden, you hear in the background, "I'm sorry, so and so," and then that happened. they still, I listened to that track, and I'm like, holy cow, what in the world is this actually real? And they're like, yeah, it was real, it actually happened. And you can tell when someone's telling the truth because their reaction and their expression of how they do it,
right?
You're like, okay. So I mean, That's the only story I heard that was, really, really crazy. And I wanted to bring that one up because if you ever go to a paranormal investigation with a group, always try to remember certain things to what they say, because sometimes you don't know what's going to get regurgitated back to you. Like when you ask a question, wait about a minute and then ask another question. So, I mean, certain things like that, that's pretty cool. But the next one I wanted to talk about, I know a lot of people have heard about this, is Waverly Hills.
Where's this one at?
This one's in Kentucky.
Okay.
It's been on a lot of TV shows because a lot of paranormal groups.
Activity. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember watching a TV show. I can't remember the name of it. It was on sci-fi. It was very, very well known, and then all of a sudden they got hit as fakes. But every Halloween they do a live investigation, and this was one of the live investigations. And they put cameras in some of the certain areas that are very, very hit with paranormal activity. And the back of my mind's like, pay attention to the ball. Because they had a ball on camera. So I was like, why is that ball? So I clicked on it. And
like a bouncy ball?
Like a kid's bouncy ball.
Like the ones from The Shining where he's bouncing them off the walls? Like the little blue ones that are rubber?
Yeah, just like that one. Just like that one. It made it look a little bit freaky and everything else. It was kind of like the Toy Story ball with the star on it.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that.
Okay.
So I kept my eyes on the screen and I'm watching. 5 minutes go on. 10 minutes. Hour goes along, all of a sudden I see the ball do this. Rolls from one side of the screen to the next.
Huh.
Nobody was
from
around.
Camera to camera.
Mm-hmm. Nobody was around. And I typed in, I was like, hey, you guys might want to check the room. The ball just moved. Sure enough, they went up to the room and they're like, holy cow. And they gave credit to me because I put a different name on it because I didn't want to put my name on it. And it was really cool just to see that and experience it. When you see that, you're like, holy cow, I was part of seeing that happen.
Yeah.
In the back of my head, I was like, okay, I'm glad I listened to that. And that was one of the stories I really, really liked about. And also, I wanted to go to Waverly Hills. But it's hard to go there because a lot of people, it's blocked off. You have to get a lot of stuff, But that was.
What did Waverly Hills used to be?
It used to be a insane asylum.
Okay.
It was like a hospital / insane asylum, and they have that long hall where they haul all the patients, so none of the citizens can see these people. So they have a long hall where they.
And I'm guessing it's like shut down. It's no longer in operation, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's messed. I ain't going anywhere near that place. I can tell you right now. That's messed up.
Oh yeah.
All right. So from there, if you aren't at least a little bit freaked out, I'm very surprised. But we're gonna go into a more calm, happy, nostalgic feeling. Which part of why we bring the horror aspect into this is because that's one thing I loved. Like horror now is starting to make a comeback as far as in movies, shows, and stuff like that. You can tell by like how popular it was, as well as other movies we talked about last time. But horror is something I remember and I enjoyed growing up, as did J-Bat. So we want to bring that into the podcast too. And I think that that's one of those feelings, just like laughing and being happy, being excited about something. It's one of those things that some people forget how it feels when they get older. So being a little scared is just like, it's almost like being a kid again.
Oh, yeah.
When well, there's some kids that aren't scared of anything, like my daughter, I feel. But, most kids do have some fears. And watching Unsolved Mysteries with that freaky theme song and the host, I like reenacting him, like pop out from under a tree in the dark. Tonight on Unsolved Mysteries. I can't do his voice, but Robert Stack, that's his name. Mm-hmm. Freaky looking dude with his little Inspector Gadget coat. Tonight on Unsolved Mysteries. And
And that was like the cheesiest music
but it
ever.
was creepy as hell.
Yes.
And at the end, when the episode would end,
It made you feel like, okay, I need to go help this group out.
Yeah, and it'd be the freakiest music. Like, God forbid that they were talking about some murderers that haven't been found yet.
Jeez.
If you watch it now, of course, don't try to call the numbers and stuff because it shows from way back when.
Now they're just put not working or like a big
don't
cross
call
on
this
it.
number,
Yeah.
or just cut the shot out of it. But yeah, fear is one of those things that we have from almost birth, and we like bringing that back, that feeling. So
Most of us like to confront our fear and try to overcome it.
I'm never going into some of these places you named today. But moving into
I might do it pretty soon.
We'll get it on camera so I can laugh. Like, oh God! But from there we're gonna move into games. Before we move into games, though, I want to throw something funny at J-Bat just to see his reaction to this. So I was at work the other day, and I kind of had a little dilemma. I was just thinking to myself, this is something that frustrates me. And I just wanted to see if it's something that you go through as well.
Uh-oh.
It's totally not as serious as you may think it is, me kind of describing it. But anyways, it's funny as hell. So t-shirts, okay? Obviously, we're coming out with Team Gear soon. That's something that's coming out. Team Nostalgia X, Team Gear. We'll definitely update y'all with when we get more news around that. But sizes, dude. So I'm in this weird predicament where I wear large shirts, but depending on the material they're made of, the company that makes them, a lot of my shirts fit fantastic when I buy them. The second I wash them, they turn into like mediums, dog. And they just like no longer fit me. I feel like I'm in between sizes, dude. Because like
It makes you feel like you're gaining weight.
Well, listen, if I buy an extra large, I feel like I'm wearing a muumuu. Like, and then if I buy a large, it fits great. But then I wash it and it doesn't fit me anymore. What do I do, J-Bat? What do you recommend?
Dude, get a size bigger, man.
But then if I buy the muumuu, I can't wear that shit.
But the thing is, when you wash it, it shrinks, so it's going to be a perfect size for you.
That's what I thought too. But then when I wash the extra larges, they're still too big. It's like, I don't know, dude.
Just stick with the large.
Yeah.
Just stick with the large.
I'm just going to have to suck it up, man.
Yeah.
I'm only going to get like 2 wears out of all my t-shirts. And then I'm just screwed. I'm like, my son going to have to be like, Brett, you're going to have to, wear this 10 years from now. You got tons of hand-me-downs coming for you. Everything
Coming up on Nostalgia X Podcast, auctioning off DJ Doom's shirts.
Worn 2 times.
We can personalize the back.
The first time I wore it, and then the second time when I washed it and threw it on, and it didn't fit. So I took it right off.
That's so bad.
But I was just thinking of that, and I'm just like, golly, I wonder if J-Bat has this issue, because this is one of the most irritating things ever. And then certain brands, I mean, I talked to J-Bat, I'm not going to name drop any brands, because, I don't want to, persuade someone or talk someone out of buying certain things. But there's certain shirts out there that you buy them, and they're kind of thin, and then those are the worst. Those are the king of, I'll probably only get 1 wear out of them, because once I wash those, they go from large to medium. It's just like they're cheaply made. So be careful out there when you're buying shirts that a lot of the geek fandom stuff is like that. Like it looks great online.
Yes.
And then when you get it, it's like the thinnest shirt ever. And you're just like, oh, okay. And if you're a small guy, like, we're regular sized guys. So if you're
I'm fat, man. I'm fat.
Shut up. No, you're not. But for for slimmer fellas and females.
Non-husky.
Right.
Non-husky. Let's just put it like that. The non-husky ones.
I got a funny husky story, because I was husky when I was a kid, like 5th, 6th grade. I'll cut into that, and then I'll jump back on the subject of shirts, and then we'll get into our top 5 video
By
games.
the way, his stories are really, really funny.
So, speaking of stories, check out our website and our little question Q&A session that we did on each other. I got a funny, most embarrassing moment on there for y'all.
Oh, that's the best one, too.
But going back to my husky story. So when I was about 5th grade, 6th grade, I was a little husky. So it's such a funny word, by the way. And it's not made up either. Obviously, it's a breed of dogs, but it's also a size of little boys' clothing.
The reason I got that word is from a good comedian. If you don't know who that comedian is, shoot us a tweet and we'll tell you.
At NSX Podcast.
At NSX Podcast.
But speaking of husky, so if you're around that age, I'd say between 3rd to 7th grade, there's a little line of jeans and clothing called Husky pants. And it's not the brand, it's the size. Like, you got women's sizes, then boys' sizes, and Husky is one of them. And I guess they give you a little more room around the waist. You know what I'm saying? That's the best way to describe it. It was a long time ago, so I don't know if they had a little elastic or what, kind of like fat guy pants. They're not fat guy pants. They're like chubby boy pants, basically. They give you a little more stretch around the waist, so that way you can be comfortable.
You can eat a little bit more,
right,
and not feel bad at all.
You don't have to unbutton your pants if you have a big lunch or dinner.
Oh my gosh!
But anyway. In the Husky section at J.C. Penney, that used to be where my mom would take us to get clothes. That was the hot spot. Like when we went to J.C. Penney, we would take yearly trips to J.C. Penney before the summer was up for school. The school year to get clothes. So I was in my Husky years. We went to get me some Husky pants, and I saw a girl that I knew from school.
Uh-oh.
And I'm pretty sure we were going from 5th grade to 6th grade. So this is that year you're like about to go to middle school. You feel like, you're grown and stuff.
I feel like you're maturing.
You're about to get a locker for the first time. I'm about to get my locker. And inside my locker, I'm going to have some cool stuff, favorite band pictures,
Trapper
whatever.
Keeper.
Right. You're just feeling like, $1 million, whatever. Well, anyway, I try to greet the girl. I'm talking to her for a few minutes. My mom was out trying to find me some pants. She knows my size better than I do. And she comes up and interrupts my conversation. It's like, Edwin, what do you think about these?
Oh.
These are your size, Husky.
Oh, oh my gosh.
Just, shit all over my conversation there. Last thing a girl that you may be interested in you, last thing they want to hear is that you wear Husky pants. So.
Okay, here's a little tidbit you don't know about me. Now I know the story. I might do that in the public with him. So I may do something really funny. I don't know. We'll see as the time comes about.
My mom doesn't really block like that. She actually, introduced me to some very beautiful females throughout my life. But that one time, she got me bad. And she didn't even know it, too. She was oblivious. She was just like, Husky. And then, my parents are Puerto Rican. So Husky to her doesn't mean what it means to us.
Doesn't mean diddly squat.
Right? It's Husky, Like, Husky to me, you might as well have been like, hey, fat boy, what you doing trying to talk to that girl?
Hey, Chunky Bud.
So, my mom did not know, so don't hold it against her. But, needless to say, I had no courage or any... There was no chance for me and that girl.
Oh, my gosh.
But moving into top 5 games, so... I think we'll start with mine. I got my top 5 games from growing up. My first true home console was the regular Nintendo, the NES, as some call it for short. And I was born in '88, so there are, some people that are around my age, that maybe the original Sega Master System was their first system, or maybe they were more Atari. Whatever the case may be, but almost everyone had an NES. It's one of the best-selling systems of all time, and once it had been out for some time, it dropped so much in price that you can get them for next to nothing. and there was a million games for this thing. So every time a new movie would come out, they'd drop a game, and the covers would have the best art on them. So you'd get some game that looked super awesome, and then you pop it in, and it's straight garbage. That's what it's notorious for.
Well, the collector's value is not because of the game itself; it's the artwork on the box.
Yeah, because a lot of collectors care about that.
A lot of collectors, when they try to get the box, they try to get the box with it, and it gets super, super hard to get it.
Right. But I'm more so saying that the NES, as well as old systems from that time, are, birth years, that time period, they were notorious for dope-looking covers, shitty-ass games. There's a lot of it. Not all of them. We're going to go through a couple of our favorites from growing up. I'm going to start. So one of my top five games growing up that I remember playing and that I still love to this day, because lucky for us, we don't have to leave these things in the past. We can play them through, buying the system again and buying the game, emulators, whatever. Nintendo's putting out these the SNES and the NES Classic. You can play some of those games on there, some of your old favorites. You don't always get all of them, but they at least try to get the most popular, So with that said, one of my all-time favorite games was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. It was, I believe, made popular in the arcade itself, just one of those side-scrolling beat-em-up games. And you can play co-op, and if I'm not mistaken, the arcade version, you can play all 4 turtles at once. You could at least play 2, I know for a fact. It probably was just 2. But you and your friend can co-op, beat up the Foot Clan, go through the bosses. It would take several quarters to get all the way to the end, but it was just fun.
Yeah, it was like, I think it was a quarter to play, quarter to continue. Yeah. So I think I remember burning like $2-3.
And you probably get 2 lives or something like that on the arcade mode.
Garbage.
Yeah. So there was a cheat code you can put in on the home console NES version that would get you like 99 lives, and if you did that, then obviously you don't care to die, you'll be all right. And if you do it right, you can beat the whole game and still have lives spared, and you don't have to stress about it. But the game being an arcade game, those games are made tougher because in an arcade, part of the trick is for them to get you to stay by putting in more quarters. They get more money. So those games are dialed up in a difficulty setting so that way they do get you to put more quarters. If they're super easy, you beat the game and then you won't come back. If they're super hard, they keep you coming back because you're like, I gotta beat this. Yeah. And then they got your money. You know what I'm saying? So that's the magic behind an arcade. If you didn't know that, I just gave you some kind of business 101. Start your own arcade. Not that now's the best time to do it, but hey, maybe it is. Who knows? But anyway, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. Part 1 is a totally different game. That one's almost like, I don't even know how to describe it. Part 1 is not great. Part 2, though, it's just in a class of its own. It's cutting edge for its time, and it still holds its value today. Like, if you were to play today, the graphics may not look that great, but you'd still be like, man, this is fun. And they have everything from street beat 'em up. They have a skateboard level that everyone loves because you're actually on a rocket-powered skateboard.
Yeah,
and
that was a cool part.
You get to jump up and kick stuff in the face. And you have bosses at the end of every level, with Krang being one of them and Shredder being the final boss, just like you would expect in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. And that game we play, HeroClix, is actually sort of doing a commemoration or anniversary type thing, and they're putting them in a new set, which is pretty cool. And there's a lot of stuff, even Stranger Things, that has done Target exclusive, at least to my knowledge, 8-bit pop figures. So that whole retro nostalgia feel of how things used to be in video games with the bits, 8 bits and stuff like that, 16-bit with Super Nintendo or whatever, 32-bit, all that's getting, it's starting to rear its head again and show up in a lot of the collectibles, which is super awesome. And me and Jay are totally into it. But Ninja Turtles game, I grew up on Ninja Turtles, everything from the movies, the video games, their little music tour that they went on, all that stuff, TV shows. and collectibles.
The Ninja Rap.
Ninja Rap, love that song. That's still a hit. I don't care what nobody says. And then Vanilla Ice. They say a lot of people say he was a one-hit wonder. They forget about the Ninja Rap, man. The kids know he wasn't a one-hit wonder.
Well, he's not a one-hit wonder now.
But back then,
construction.
Yeah, he got his own show and stuff. But no, yeah. So that was one of my favorite things. Just the franchise in general. They did fantastic with it, and now it's back. So our kids, me and Jay Bats, can enjoy it again. So I love the fact that Ninja Turtles have sort of done a little 180 and came back, and now as adults we get to enjoy it again and act like it's just for our sons, but we're totally into it too. Another game I really loved. This one I hold dear to my heart because it was probably not a game I should have played at the age I was playing it, which was like age 3 and up, but Double Dragon. So for those that haven't played the original Double Dragon, one of the best soundtracks in a video game for its time, hands down. Synthesizer. Right. On top of that, this is how you have video game gold in the 80s and 90s. They put out a shitty movie based off the game. But
yeah. I watched that 2 nights ago, man.
What?
Yeah, dude.
Why'd you waste your time? But anyway, Double Dragon, the intro to the game, a gang in the middle of the street comes up, random street by the way. I don't even think the main character lives on the street. Anyway, gang, about 5 dudes, they look really rough, come up, punch a girl in the face, throws the main gang member, throws her over his shoulder, and walks out. That's how the game opens.
We got a big head too.
4 or 5-year-olds should not be seeing that.
Yeah, I remember some of those bullies had the biggest heads in that game. You're like,
yeah,
what the world?
They had to make them that big so that way they can actually put facial expressions on them. Otherwise, the 8-bit just wouldn't have worked. So yeah, they kind of have. If you ever played 007 GoldenEye for the 64, where you can put big head mode, they call it DK mode for Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong got a big head. Mm-hmm. Sort of the same thing. These guys, their heads were about 3 times the size that they should have been. But just to see detail, that's why they went that route. And it worked. I love it. But the game is super awesome. It has boss fights just like the Ninja Turtle game I just mentioned, kind of a side-scrolling beat 'em up. And you can actually, there's a second mode from the main screen to where it's like a Street Fighter type fighting game. It's a lot more basic. There's not as much combos and moves. But for that to be built in as a bonus feature on the game, it was awesome. So if you had a buddy come over or a sibling, you can go into fighting mode and they would take characters from the game, most of which are mini bosses and bosses, and you can fight one-on-one.
I like that.
On top of having the main story game, which was also 2 players, but the way it would go is first player would go, and once they die, second player would get to start off. And then you can kind of see who gets further in the game and beat levels together. And there's a lot of little glitches in the game that I still remember. Like at the end of level 2, there's a mini boss that comes up, and if you just go down the stairs or up the stairs, you don't even have to fight her. And it's actually the way to do it because she takes a few hit points away if you fight her.
Oh, wow.
There's no way to avoid getting smacked in the face a few times by her. So there's a lot of little funny quirks with the game that I remember, but I love it. So next game, I'm not going all Nintendo NES at least on these, but my last NES game on this list is Shadow of the Ninja, and most people don't even know what the hell this is. And and the game itself has, going back to that badass looking cover, it has a badass looking cover. Just look up Shadow of the Ninja Nintendo Online and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's got this super tan, muscular, ninja-looking dude, and he's got his sword in his hand. And then the second player had to be a girl, which kind of sucks if you had a buddy that is 5 and it's not cool being a girl on a video game. The second character is a girl, and so she's on the cover looking badass, and she's got that 80s like Baywatch looking, just tan and dark hair, light eyes thing going on, and she's
Don't
got
forget
some.
they gotta have that poofy hair too.
You're right.
The 80s had that poofy hair.
And then she's got something over her face because that represents her being a ninja. You know what I'm saying? So they had the badass cover going on, and they look like they're in front of a city like New York or something. And you can see like the water and then the city buildings behind them. It just looks super awesome. And the game itself is actually really awesome. The only problem, I never got past like level 4 or 5. I can't remember. But the game itself was freaking amazing. And I think if I went back now, I can maybe get past level 4 or 5, or I'd probably just fall flat on my face and not get past level 2 or 3. But
because you'll forget
the game,
what to do.
The game. Oh, I still remember it, bruh. Muscle memory, my boy. But but the game itself, awesome. I can replay the levels in my mind and just be like, oh my god. And the music also awesome. So you'll see a similar trend, like super awesome soundtrack sometimes leads to a super awesome game. 2 more games, because I was 1, 2, and 3. These aren't in any particular order, by the way. I'm just kind of throwing them out. But Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo.
Ooh.
So cool story about the Super Nintendo. Growing up, I wasn't poor or anything, but my dad, he was very, frugal. He didn't want to just spoil us and buy everything, and I am very appreciative that he did that. But he got us a Super Nintendo. It had been out probably for 2 or 3 years at the time. I want to say 2. He found a good deal. He wasn't one of those types to go buy it in the store brand new. He wanted to get a good deal, and makes sense to me. He ended up with a great deal. One of his buddies ended up selling it to him with 2 controllers, a bunch of games, and I still remember to this day one of the controllers had a cigarette imprint burned into the center of it. So I still remember player 2 usually ended up with that controller. But anyway,
you always try to make sure you're player 1.
Right. Both controllers worked fine because Nintendo and Super Nintendo controllers were solid. It was hard to break those things.
Mm-hmm.
So even with the cigarette being burned down on it, it still worked flawlessly. It just wasn't the pretty one, I'll give that to my buddy. Hey man, here you go, you're player 2.
Or even worse, give it to your brother.
But that game, it redefined those types of games, like the side scroller adventure puzzle. It was just a fantastic game. The boss fights were amazing. The first level, you're escaping from a spaceship, and there's so much craziness going on that as a kid playing this game, I think I was maybe 6 or 7. No, I was probably more 7 or 8. My mind was blown. I was like, oh my god, so many visual effects. It's a breathtaking game. I don't know if you ever played it, J-Bat, but we may need to go back and play it, and then you're going to be like, holy, no wonder Metroid is still being talked about today, because this game is way ahead of its time. It's so amazing. And the bosses are just if you're into aliens.
I haven't played it.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with that. There's so much amazing things in the world that it's hard at this point to even get it all in one lifetime.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you need friends to help you move the crappy stuff out of the way and be like, this is something quality. So but yeah, we're gonna have to check that out together, and maybe we can kind of co-op and beat the game, It'll be awesome. But yeah, Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo, 10 out of 10. And that's where the Samus character, which, by the way, when I found out she was a female, being a young boy, I was a little upset. Main character's a female. It looks like a dude in armor the whole movie. You find out, it's the whole game, find out it's a chick, and you're like, what the? But then after a while, you're like, eh. So that's another thing. Like I said, it redefined games. The main character you think is this badass Arnold Schwarzenegger type dude the whole game, and then you find out it's a chick, and you're like, what the? Okay, I'll go with it. That type of stuff was not.
I'll go with the role.
That type of stuff was not, normal back then.
Right,
so,
right.
Shout out to the writers and everything. It's super awesome. My last game, and this is definitely my favorite on the list. For those that don't play RPGs or role-playing games, this one is one for the ages. You can play it right now, and it's still awesome. It's the animators that worked on Dragon Ball Z. One of them actually helped animate the characters, the art for this game, and that game is Chrono Trigger for the Super Nintendo.
You mentioned that in the first
I
episode.
believe it is on the SNES Classic as one of the 30 games.
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah. But it is super awesome. The story is amazing. There's time travel. There's magic. There's demons. There's just epicness. You go on trial in the game. I've never seen that in any other game at that age. You know, me being a young kid, I'm like, I had to testify in front of... It's not what you expect at all when it starts. You start off like a little young kid and at a carnival, local carnival, and then sooner or later, you're in front of judge and jury. And I'm not going to tell you how you get there, but there is a lot of stuff going on, and it's great. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, there's something for you there. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy, there's something for you there. If you're a fan of action movies, games, it's got something for everybody. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z, you'll love the artwork. But it's one of the best games, bar none.
Doesn't look like it's on there.
Yeah, I didn't think it was. But Super Metroid is.
It's got some good
and that's how we'll be playing Super Metroid here later today. We're going to get some Super Metroid going.
They got some good games.
And we can get our sons on it tonight, too. Because that is one of the most epic games ever. And
Yep.
it's totally going down. They're going to jaw dropped. Actually, they're about a year or two younger than I was when I witnessed Super Metroid for the first time. Whew. Oh, my God. Just thinking about it, I'm like, wow. So think of the first time you ever watched Star Wars. That feeling, you're probably like, your brain's like mind blown. What the? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
First time you watched Empire Strikes Back, especially at the end when you're like, really?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
I know that feeling.
Or the feeling at the end of Infinity Wars, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, like JJ.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I'm saying? Oh my God, poor kid. This is the worst movie ever.
I should have brought a box of tissues.
But
that was like the worst thing I ever seen from it.
Like, it's life changing. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man. But Super Metroid's that epic. I had to jump back. Chrono Trigger is that epic too. But Super Metroid, wow, that's the best way to define that. All right, from there, guys, I think that concludes our podcast. We'll hit you up with what we got going on this upcoming week. Very soon, we're going to throw it on the Twitter, and we'll be promoting the episode on Facebook. So we're going to throw a couple polls up there on some potential topics for next episodes. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at NSX Podcast. Instagram is NostalgiaX_podcast. And we definitely appreciate any support you throw at us. Donations starting as low as $1 on patreon.com/NSX podcast. So definitely show us love. I'll be hitting up the Origins Game Festival in Ohio in just a couple weeks. So if anyone's going to be there, definitely let me know on Facebook or Twitter. I'll be more than glad to meet, take pictures, chat with y'all.
Give you a hug.
Right? J-Bat's the hugger, guys.
I am not.
I'm the high-fiver and dapper and other stuff. I don't know.
Smacks those.
Booty smacker. I'm the booty smacker. I'm like the slap-ass guy. You ever watched Key and Peele?
Yeah.
Slap-ass? The guy was Hispanic, so I might have a little slap ass somewhere down the line in my family. Anyways, what you got coming up, J-Bat? You going to the beach or something?
I actually am going to go to the beach. Get to enjoy the rays and actually enjoy myself with my family. I think.
Which beach are you going to?
Down in Mobile, Gulf Shores area.
Okay. So if anyone's going to be in the Gulf Shores area in the next week and a half, you may run into J-Bat. You see a Filipino guy with a Batman shirt and Batman Speedo, that's about a size too
Batman
small.
G-string, man. Jeez, get it right.
G-string? Is that from the Bruce Wayne line?
No, dude. No.
It's That's from the Jason Todd line.
It's Damian Wayne's line, man.
The Robin line.
Where he wishes he was Batman.
It's like the Lego Robin wears a green G-string. That's what it looks like.
Oh, gosh.
Come on,
That's
Batman,
bad.
let's get moving. But anyway, guys, appreciate y'all listening. If this was your first time listening, definitely follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and like I said, check us out. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/NSX podcast. We're out.
Peace.